Hey everybody, my name is Jeremiah Gutierrez and I'm here to talk to you about requirement number 2 of the PCI-DSS framework. I'm going to go ahead and read it word for word and then go ahead and kind of explain a little bit on it once I've read it. Requirement number 2 says that do not use vendor supplied defaults for system passwords and other security parameters. Malicious individuals, external and internal to an entity, often use vendor default passwords and other vendor default settings to compromise systems. These passwords and settings are well known by hacker communities and are easily determined via public information. The actual 2.1 DSS requirement is always change vendor supplied defaults and remove or disable unnecessary default accounts before installing a system on the network. Before installing a system on the network. This applies to all default passwords. Now, this is including but not limited to those used by operating systems, software that provides security services, application and system accounts, point of sale, terminals, payment applications, simple network management protocol, community strings, etc. So very simply and easily put, anything that you purchase, routers, switches, all come with default settings. It is extremely easy for a hacker to go ahead and search online, just Google the name of the model and switch or router and look for default passwords for that device. And if you haven't changed it, then that's exactly how they'll get into your network and completely wreak havoc on whatever it is that you have going on there. 2.1.1 for wireless environments connected to the cardholder data environment or transmitting cardholder data, change all wireless vendor defaults at installation, including but not limited to default wireless encryption keys, passwords, and SNP community strings. So just getting a little bit more detailed on why it's important to change all vendor defaults before installation. Wireless environments are obviously not secure no matter how encrypted they are. There's always a way and there's always somebody working to try to crack it. And so this is the reason why we implement wireless application firewalls and a bunch of other devices in front of public facing web applications. But that goes into detail much later on in a different requirement. This is simply stating that you cannot leave the default credentials for these wireless environments at default. 2.2 develop configuration standards for all system components. Assure those standards address all known security vulnerabilities and are consistent with industry accepted system hardening standards. Of course, sources of these industry accepted standards may include but are not limited to the CIS, Center for Internet Security, ISO, International Organization of Standardization, Sysadmin Audit Network Security, or SANS Institute, and NIST, National Institute of Standards for Technology. These are the configurations that you set up will determine how well secure your system is from the most basic attempts at hacking and entering the system. Obviously, there's a lot more that goes into this, and the rest of the requirements will detail exactly what that is. 2.2.1 states implement only one primary function per server to prevent functions that require different security levels from coexisting on the same server. And it gives an example here. We're talking about web servers, database servers, and DNS that should be implemented on separate servers. The note is that where virtualization technologies are in use, implement only one primary function per virtual system component. All this wants is segregation of the individual functions and purposes of each server. You don't want a web server running DNS off of it as well. Web servers are meant to be public facing and accessible to the public. So if you had your DNS server mixed in with your web server and somebody does hack into it, because it's definitely possible. Web applications are very insecure at times, even though there's measures that are taken to ensure security. Having somebody get access to your DNS server would be a very big issue. From there they could start implementing spoofing attacks on your DNS servers and cause man-in-the-middle attacks and all sorts of different things that are beyond the scope of this video. 2.2 Point 2 states enable only necessary services, protocols, daemons, etc. as required for the function of the system. It's self-explanatory, but you don't want to allow any services that just aren't necessary. Only the ones that are required for the function of that server or system. Otherwise, you're leaving yourself vulnerable to something that could be hacked. If it's not needed, just don't use it. 2.2.3 implement additional security features for any required services, protocols, or daemons that are considered to be insecure. So when you do find something that is insecure, but it's a necessary feature or service, implement additional security for those things. There are additional security features that can be implemented on top of certain services and protocols, and those are the ones that need to be documented within the company policy and will result in compliance with this framework. 2.2.4 states to configure system security parameters to prevent misuse. So part of this is going to be interviewing any security personnel to make sure that there's safeguards set in place so that somebody who does not need, this is an example, somebody who doesn't need access to bank account information will not have access to bank account information. These parameters need to be set in place to prevent misuse of any of that data and cause other issues. If somebody happened to hack into a particular user's account and was now using that account to access data that they don't need, it could have been prevented if that user was just not given that access. They didn't need it in the first place. So 2.2.5 remove all unnecessary functionality such as scripts, drivers, features, subsystems, file systems, and unnecessary web servers. Hold on a second. Sorry about that, guys. So I was at 2.2.5. Remove all unnecessary functionality such as scripts, drivers, features, subsystems, file systems, and unnecessary web servers. This is kind of piggybacking off of the other requirement, number 2.2.1, because there are scripts that sometimes systems have, drivers, features, subsystems, all that just are not necessary for those particular web servers. And in pursuing the segregation of one web server to only be a web server, there's a lot of stuff that comes enabled in devices. If you think, for example, when you go and purchase a computer or you go and purchase any device, it comes preloaded with a whole bunch of features and security settings that may not be what you want for that particular functionality you chose to purchase that device for. So that's what this is referring to. 2.3 encrypt all non-console administrative access using strong cryptography. So anything that's a non-console administrative access needs to have strong cryptography. Clear text protocols such as HTTP, oh, I'm sorry, I guess you can't see that. There you go. HTTP, Telnet, etc. They don't have any encryption, or they don't encrypt traffic or log on details. That makes it very easy for an eavesdropper to just intercept that information. So things like SSH, obviously more secure, but anything that's non-console administrative access needs to have strong cryptography attached to it. 2.4, maintain an inventory of system components that are in scope for PCI-DSS. You need to have a list, a database, an inventory system that lists out all the components of your network, of your infrastructure, so that way you can determine if they're in scope for PCI-DSS or not. 2.5, ensure that security policies and operational procedures for managing vendor defaults and other security parameters are documented, in use, and known to all affected parties. Every person that deals with this information and data needs to know what is documented, what is within the security parameters, and it just needs to be known across all the parties that are either affected or utilizing this data and information. 2.6 Shared hosting providers must protect each entity's hosted environment and cardholder data. These providers must meet specific requirements as detailed in Appendix A1, additional PCI-DSS requirements for shared hosting providers. This is obviously listed in Appendix A1, and I'm not going to go over it in this video, but if you'd like to search more of those requirements that apply to shared hosting providers, you can definitely search that up on Google and see what that is all about. This is intended for hosting providers that provide shared hosting environments for multiple clients on the same server. When all the data is on the same server and under control of a single environment, often the settings on these shared servers are not manageable by individual clients. That allows clients to add insecure functions and scripts that can impact the security of all other client environments, and thereby makes it easier for a malicious individual to compromise one client's data and gain access to all other clients' data, if that makes sense. Requirement number 3. Okay, well, thank you so much for watching this video and listening to me go on and on about this requirement. But this is helping me document it, learn more, and learn how to speak about it more for my education's sake and my future career's sake. So thank you guys so much for watching. Have a good one.